Welcome to Small Town Big Life podcast with the boat horns start. Jackie's flying the plane.
Hello.
So we have Tina and Mary here with us today. Today we're going to talk about personal testimony. I know, Tina, you gave your personal testimony at the women's conference. So
I did.
I guess we're just going to kind of expand on that, talk about the similarities of, anyone's experience with finding Jesus and how it shapes and molds them. And this is kind of a departure for those who normally watch the podcast. It's normally it's kind of a way we invite people to look in the living room in addition to the preaching and the teachings of the Bible and Christ. But the podcast belongs to the church, and these conversations are important. And I'm looking forward to it. So how you guys doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, Mary, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
You good? Okay. We were talking about doing a podcast, and I was trying to explain to her that's laid back. It's not like we have pressure. We don't have 1 million people or anything like that listening. So.
No, I always say it's just like talking to you on a Sunday.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is. So, Tina, you good?
I'm great. Yeah, thank you.
So you had initially had the idea to talk about this. I guess, like always, I tell everyone we have paperwork. But before we refer to our bullet point list, what made you feel like, you know what, I think this would be a cool conversation, that kind of thing?
Well, it all started with my testimony, and that was driven by God just speaking to my. I just think that the Holy Spirit just kept nudging me, and it's like, you got to get your story out there.
Right.
And so I am the type of person, I'm kind of an introvert. I like to be around people. I like to carry on a conversation with them, but sometimes I'm not very good at it. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be an introvert and be alone most of the time, I might as well just get my story out there because I have Jesus.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I don't have anybody else. I have Jesus.
Right. And that's the bottom line. And it's interesting because I know before when we had discussions about testimonies and things like that, you had reservations, basically the same reservations a lot of folks do, which is, and that is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, basically this is my interpretation. Disclosing very personal information about your past is difficult sometimes in a public format.
It was hard.
Right. And I think that's the power of the testimony, because I always tell people a Christian is the opposite of a politician. And I don't care what party you vote for. It's just, by and large, politicians have to pretend they're perfect and have never done anything wrong. And Christians get up there and say, boy, have I got a story for you, what I used to be like. They do the opposite. They disclose.
That's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how they get glory, from telling the truth. And I always used to say, boy, wouldn't it be cool if politicians went up there and go, I made a huge mistake back in such and such date. Then you'd be like, oh, look, they're real.
Yeah, it'd be refreshing.
I think that's something that politicians and Christians have in common, is they like to hide.
Oh, you mean during their walk or before their walk?
Both.
Yeah. Well,
mostly before. I mean, if you give your life over to Jesus, you don't have anything to hide anymore.
No, because when you disclose your past, I was doing a addiction thing with a friend of mine, and we were talking. It was like a 2-hour video of our pasts with me and a fellow musician that I worked, and we were laughing at some of it. And I stopped in the middle of the laughter. I said, just so everyone knows, we're not laughing because we're glorifying drinking and drugging, and the laughter is because we're laughing at how stupid we used to be when we thought we could work independently outside of God. Right. So we're laughing at the foolishness, not like, this is a good time, you should do it.
Right.
But disclosing all that stuff just elevates what God has done. So it shows.
Right.
So, Mary, we haven't really talked about any personal testimony of you. I know you're a Christian. I know your family really well. And I know that you came along with Tina and decided to join in the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've got some stuff to talk about with your own journey today.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. All right. Who wants to get started? You want to go first, since you had the idea?
Sure.
Yeah. We can go off the list if you want, or we don't have to. So the first thing on our list, if you want to, this is a broad thing. What was your spiritual experience with, was your spiritual experience with God something that happened in a one giant aha moment or something that took hold over time? Because I think both of those types are the two different ways that it happens.
I definitely was not an aha moment. I think mine was gradual.
Yeah.
Through my sin and through my shame and my fear of people and being around people and trying to please them and yet not getting anything in return because they knew my past. Most of them did anyway. I just started digging into Scripture and just praying and watching, like different sermons. Dr. David Jeremiah, he was very helpful to listen to. You were helpful to listen to. I love your messages, and they really got down deep into my soul. So I think the question whether it was gradual or how, it was definitely gradual. And it just, giving my testimony was extremely, like I said, I think I was inspired by the Holy Spirit to do that because I thought it was very important. I know there are people out there that need to hear that, hey, oh, wow, she is talking about something that people just don't talk about. But I just want people to know, and the reason I did it, and I left a lot of holes in that testimony. I didn't tell everything because I didn't think it was important to tell everything.
Yeah, sometimes there's a fine line you don't want to cross, or you do, because some people are listening for lascivious reasons. So they go,
very true.
Yeah,
so they have dirt on you now.
Trust me, I know that.
And then there's other times. It all depends on the individual. I guess it depends on the nature and the purpose of the testimony. Sometimes that's important. For example, in a room full of addicts, and they're talking about, they're very specific, and that's for a reason. But sometimes it's better. I was just talking about this the other day in the pulpit, to give the broad idea of what you're talking about is all that really matters. So, Mary, was your faith walk in your life always? Did you have an aha moment as a young person, or did you just?
I think it was both.
Can you move that mic closer to you?
It was kind of
There we go.
both for me. It was a slow process at first.
Yeah. Like what age were you?
I was I went to church when I was young. I kind of faded out around 14. Got pregnant at an early age. Had my 3 older kids by the age of 19. I was married at a young age. I got baptized before I got married, but wasn't really a baptism. It was a sprinkle. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this right now, try to walk.
That's actually a very common pattern. People that are young, because I would say between, and this is just me spitballing, between like 14, 15, and 25, 26 years old, that's when you go, hey, God, I want to try a few things on my own for a minute. I'll get back with you. And then later in your mid-20s, your 30s, whatever, you start to go, I think I need to clean house a little bit. So internally, take some inventory and get things right. Yeah. And I know for that age, for me, and for a lot, it's all about me. There's nothing that's not about. I am the center of the universe, and everything else is orbital in relation from between the age of 15 and 25.
Right.
And that's why a lot of young people leave the church. So, and then later, I did that. I mean, I went to Sunday school when I was a kid and all that stuff. And then, hey, between 15 and 25, I think I'll be complicity to 3 felonies, get locked up, live my life, start a band, drink, fight, and do all that and chase women. And I'll get back with you in mid-20s or so, and we'll try to clean this mess up. All right, God, thanks. I'll see you in a minute.
All right.
Yeah, that was the attitude. That was the attitude.
Right.
And I don't laugh to glorify it. I laugh to, we all share this. I think we have this part of stupidity where we go, when for the toddler stage, they call it the terrible twos. But for the once you start going into adolescence, I think that's when it says, I need to go back to idiot mode for a little bit so I can learn that the stove burns me again. And then come back and say, I need healed, metaphorically speaking. Anyway, that's where I left that. So anyway, so it was the same for you. Were you a kid like, oh, praise Jesus, and then you get older, you're like, woo!
Oh yeah.
That's what people do.
The church that I went to, and I'm not bad mouthing. Trust me, I'm not. I was very rebellious. I was rebellious as a teenager, and I couldn't wait to be able to get away from church and God and all the rules and regulations, and you're going to hell if you do this, you do that. And so it really wasn't, I didn't feel it was represented to me correctly back then. Or maybe it just was me just being ADD and just didn't really let it sink in. I was also a daydreamer, and I just didn't pay attention, and I sat in church and thought of all the things I could be doing at home and that kind of history at church. But when I got pregnant young too. I got pregnant at 19 though, and that's not young. It's a very immature 19 for me, because I wasn't ready to be a mother at 19. I had 2 babies by the age of 20.
Yeah, it's
So
getting pregnant young. To look at it in a bad light is a cultural bias. And what I mean is, in America, we're distracted by all the things we can do, places we can go, recreations we can participate in. There are some countries where somebody just lives in a hut. And 2 tribes want the daughter to get married at 15 because they want to start having kids. So they got somebody to harvest, just like in the ancient times. So it all depends on, and I'm only saying this because I don't personally see someone who got pregnant young as an oddball, extreme sinner person. It's something that happened, and it's another thing that Christ needs to work with in the life. How do I get through this? That's the whole reason Jesus is what he does for us. So, and I'm only saying that because if anyone's out there listening that's 15 or 16 and they're pregnant, I don't want them to think, oh, my life's over. I've done the horrible thing. I'm not married and all that stuff. These are the things. I mean, this sermon I'm preaching coming up this weekend is called The God of Second Chances. You turn to Jesus and don't listen to the people around you before you filter everything through Christ first. I mean, that's that's the pastor's take on this stuff. I mean, we've all done stuff that you look back. I think some of the worst stuff I done I was like 16.
Ugh.
What was your walk like, Jackie? Was you a Christian as a kid and then?
No. We grew up without religion. We grew up in a completely agnostic. Basically, we were Jedi.
Right? I get that. I know what you mean by that.
Okay, there is something out there. There is a force out there, and Mother Nature is very powerful. And my parents were Roman Catholic, so when they got divorced, we're all going to hell anyway, so let's not be Catholic anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So my mother didn't force religion on us. So my journey was definitely very gradual, little steps, as I kept doing more and more research on prove me wrong,
Right.
and tell me why this is all real, because I don't buy it. And then things started to get proven to me. And then, yes, I did have the light bulb at the very end. And to me, we talk about film a lot. And to me, it was like that moment when they're filming a movie and they have that clapper thing and they go, and everything changes.
Oh, that's good. That's a good analogy.
And yeah, I had that moment. I was actually watching Amadeus, this movie Amadeus, that I've loved since I was a child. And for some reason, it dawned on me, this stupid idea. Now looking back, it's like, duh, but this idea that Mozart was laying in bed and writing whichever symphony it was at the time about Jesus. And it dawned on me, that's the same guy. That's the same Jesus that the people I was hanging out with at another church were trying to tell me about. This was Mozart 300 years ago, professing his love for this spiritual entity. That's the same guy. Maybe it is real. And then poof,
There's a lot of doors into faith. And
Yeah.
it is through, like you said, it can be a small thing.
just the weirdest little thing that solidified
I
it
tell
for
people
me.
that's God tapping you on the shoulder, and when he does that, you should listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting. We never talked about that.
We've never
that's pretty
talked
cool.
about it. Yeah.
So, let's refer to our list. We wanted to, when this topic comes up, there's so many places you can go with it, so that's why we had a list to keep it kind of linear. Tina, when did you first start to feel the pull from God that inspired you to start taking personal inventory and decide to make some changes? So when did you go, you know what? I got to talk to God for a minute. I got to make a change here. Something's got to happen. When did that happen?
Yeah, well, I told you that I'm not real good with people, but my kids kind of turned on me when I left, understandably.
When you left? Oh, you mean when you're
When
in
I
a
left my
marriage? Okay, I got you.
And when Glenn and I got together, and I became pregnant with Chris, and we got married.
Who's an outstanding kid, by the way.
Oh,
that young
thank
man
you.
is like, I've spent a lot of time talking with him. He is one of the most impressive young people I've met. So
Thank you.
yeah, you did a good job with him. Go ahead.
Well, that was my second chance at having a baby and raising a son.
Yeah.
Because the first time I was terrible. So thank you, Jesus, for giving me that chance and that opportunity, because he is amazing. So where was I going with that?
What made you decide? The question was, when did you say, I got to get my life together, get right with Jesus?
Well, I think as hard as I tried to get my kids to accept Chris and Glenn, my marriage to Glenn, they had been, I don't know if brainwashed is the right word. It was very hard for
how old were
their
they
father.
at that time?
They were 20, I believe 20 and 21.
Okay, so they were grown.
They were grown. Okay. But they had heard different things from other people, including their father, what I had done, and that didn't go down well. And so they turned against me, and later on, they started coming around. I would say Seth started coming around maybe a year later. It took Kaylin a little bit longer to come around, but anyway, not too long ago, it was over a year ago actually, I had been playing for the last 20 years since Glenn and I got together. I felt guilt and shame and just didn't feel worthy of God's love and didn't feel worthy of anybody's love, really. I just felt just terribly, overwhelmingly guilty. And so every time I would get together with my kids, I would play the victim. And I just felt in my heart that they didn't forgive me yet, just by the way, their actions, their words. And so anyway, it's a long story, but they ended up turning on me again. And they haven't spoken to me in over a year.
Still?
Over a year, still. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My daughter-in-law hasn't spoken to me. Now, I do speak to the kids, my grandkids. I do speak to the oldest one mostly. And my other son, the next to the oldest one, he and I have a pretty decent relationship now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It takes time. I mean, shattered families come are from a variety of circumstances. My daughter, I was close with my whole life, won't talk to me now. She turned against me over a presidential election a few years back, and we'd been close our whole life. I mean, I encouraged her to go to art school. We talked about arts, movies, music. I didn't even know she had political views, and she still hasn't talked to me since she. That's I don't want to make this podcast about me, but what I do want to put a point on is the fact that don't feel alone when your own kids won't talk to you. I talk to people in this church, and outside of church whose kids won't talk to them for a number of reasons. I didn't talk to my dad for a long years. My dad didn't talk to my grandparents for 15 years. It's unfortunately there is no such thing as the nuclear family. And I told my daughters that when they were young, teenagers, and we were having a lighthearted, comical conversation about families that are dysfunctional. And I said, if you think your friends' families are perfect, spend a weekend with them.
Right.
You'll hear things that'll make you go, oh, wow. I said, and that's why there's a need for Jesus. We are broken. Families are broken. Families split up. Families fight. Mary, I know you're not talking, but it's true, right? Because I just want to get you involved in the conversation.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm not saying, Mary, your family's really jacked up, aren't they? Just for people watching, that's not why I'm saying that.
It's dysfunctional.
I just want her to have a voice. Well, I mean, we all are.
We all are.
Yeah.
We all are.
So, that's that. I just want to encourage you not to be discouraged about those type of things, because they have a way of either self-correcting or sometimes I've told people, there are some relationships that weren't meant to go on, and it hurts to say goodbye to the relationship, and we don't understand until later in life why God used that separation, but he did for something, and he can for something. So, and I don't know the answers, but that's why we live on trust and faith. And for me, that makes sense, because there's been a million times, because I talk to people about these type of problems in my office, that something seems horrible, and then later in life, they go, you know what? This is starting to make sense now because of these things that are happening in my life this way, and I don't know, faith and trust.
I think that's where I got maybe an aha moment, because at that point where I knew that I was going to get cut off, I just know, because it's our relationship was that fragile. That
Careful on the table.
I know, sorry. She warned me. That fragile that I knew that it was something's going to go horribly wrong, and I'm going to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it was that moment that I decided. That's when I started therapy sessions, counseling sessions, to figure out why I can't get over this. Why can't I forgive myself? This is ridiculous.
Well, you can't. That's another misconception. I don't want to turn it. You can't forgive yourself. People always say that. Forgive yourself. Right. It's like you. When we use the word forgiveness, it means to forgive a debt. You can only forgive a debt. The only person who can forgive a debt is the one it's owed to.
Jesus.
And that's that. Yeah. And Jesus paid the debt for us. So God forgives our debts. You can't forgive yourself.
Right.
What people should say though, you need to learn to forgive yourself. And they mean nice things.
Right.
But what the intention is good. But the reality is you need to learn to accept the forgiveness of Christ. And then you can, because I've made jokes before, I wish I could forgive myself. I would write a letter to the bank. I have decided to forgive myself of these car payments. Sorry for any inconvenience, but I am forgiving myself now. Good luck. And I can't forgive that debt because I owe it to somebody else.
Right.
Well, that might have been you that mentioned that there's nowhere in the Bible that says you need to forgive yourself.
No, you can't.
That makes it all about you.
It does.
And it's not about me. It's not about anybody in my family. It's not about, it's about accepting the forgiveness of that Jesus forgives us, and we just need to accept it, repent, and go on.
That's
and
right.
Just live the life of
all sins are ultimately
Christ.
Against God.
Right.
Even when we carry them out against another person, that's against God. So that's who we ask for forgiveness of. But anyway, yeah. Okay, we're easing into our third. What is it?
Do you want to ask Mary the same question?
I did. I thought that's how we started. I'm getting lost. Okay, Jackie, take over.
When we originally started the question, the beginning of the question was like, was there a moment that you suddenly felt like the pull and the
moment when you said something's got to change? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd say it happened about a couple years ago, when Dave and I had decided to jump full into this business that we're into, and I was working it mostly by myself, which gave me a lot of time to converse with God, and that there was my aha moment. He was like, Mary, it's time to stop focusing on everyone else and bring your focus back to me. So I know that my children were not happy about it because they kept saying, Mom, we miss you. We don't see you anymore. And I'm like, oh, well, I got things to do. And then pretty much I just started digging deeper. And that's when I realized that this world is not about me. What happens in this world is not important. It's the ending. And what happens at the end.
The eternal perspective. Yeah. I mean, this is like the waiting room into eternity. So the way we conduct ourselves in the waiting room we can either listen to the doctor, what he says, or, yeah, no, I get that. So for you personally, it's been in recent times that you've been having a journey closer back to God.
Right.
Okay. And
Well, I thought I was on a close relationship with him for a long time. I thought, oh yeah, I got this. And then my aha moment made me realize, like, no.
Nope, you don't got it.
Well,
No.
I mean, the need doesn't stop; it stays there, and I don't think anyone ever stops growing. I think all people in general, when you start in this relationship with Christ, you eventually things that you think are okay. You're like, this is okay. I'm okay in this part of my life, and then sometimes it takes a minute to go, this is not okay, and it's very comfortable for me to do this, but I'm at a point now where I have to admit, because it feels like it's right to me, does God say it's right? Because there's some people who endorse things or lifestyles or behaviors or whatever. I don't want to get specific because I'm not going to attack certain people, and they think, that's okay. I just don't feel like God would be against that. I'm like, well, what does he say? And then we get this part in our life where we go, well, what he says isn't consistent with what I say. So I'll just pick and choose the part that God says. But I look at any rules or things that God has. If you just take the broad idea of what Jesus teaches is right and wrong, and I think anything he teaches that I'm uncomfortable with, is it unreasonable that he's against it? And then I think, no, it's not unreasonable. But there's a constant that. I'm going to give you an example. I think this is in my sermon. That's why it's in my head, because I wrote it down. Somebody kills somebody I know, and they get away with it, and they're let out of court, and everyone knows they did it. And I want revenge. They should pay for that. And is it wrong that this person gets to walk free without paying for what they've done? I just don't feel it is. That's the human heart. That's me. Mm-hmm. I don't feel it is. Well, God says vengeance is mine. Well, you know what? I don't want vengeance. I want justice. That's just a trick on words. Mm-hmm. When we say justice all the time, when we mean revenge. Mm-hmm. And it's like those things are tough to come to terms with. When it says, well, God says vengeance is mine and you need to take a back seat. And that's the type of thing. There's many, many, many topics, but that's one of them where I'm not comfortable with what God says about it. So I'm going to still adopt my own way of thinking on this one thing. And I think that every single person with their relationship with God gets to one of those walls and has to break it down from time to time, going, man, I got to get through. I mean, I've been doing this or thinking this or living this way, and I just got to knock this wall down and trust God, And it sounds like recently you've had a wall somewhere where you said, okay, I got to break through this and kind of think about the relationship with God, what he says, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he was calling me to to the next step, to the next level. It's like a video game. I'm going on level 4 now, And
not everyone, like Tina, not everything we do when God calls us to do something isn't something in ministry. Doesn't mean go preach or go spread the gospel. Sometimes it's just for your own family. And God's telling you, listen, I'm calling you to do this, take this action, do this thing, trust in me for this purpose, that kind of thing. And that's what you're describing, you're doing this tearaway thing from trying to divorce guilt, actually, and embrace what God says and says, I'm right. Because there's a lot of people, and it's hard, the world looks at Christians and like, like in the movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? When they got saved, and he goes, well, you boys might be square with the Lord, but the state of Mississippi is a whole nother matter.
That's
right. And sometimes we do get right with God, but the person that had a beef with us, they're still not okay with us. Mm-hmm. And that's difficult to overcome because we got one foot in faith and one foot in the world. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yeah. And that's where, it sounds like that's where you're talking, what you're talking
hard.
about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're, like I said, you're trying to divorce guilt, and it's already, the papers have been signed. It's just the other party may not like the terms.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I get totally what you're saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jackie, you got to have something to chime in here.
Yeah. My poll was more of a smack in the face. I'm one of those people who you hear about sometimes someone has the actual physical interaction, the poke on the shoulder.
Yeah.
So not getting into my whole testimony, but I was in a really bad place. I've suffered from severe depression for a number of years. And I was on a riverside in my car and was going to drive it into the river. And I put my hand on the gear shift and I said, listen, God, I want to believe. I really do. But you got to show me something. Give me something. And I pushed in the button on the gear shift and my phone rang. And long story short, I didn't drive into the river, and everything changed from that moment forward. It's like, oh crap. Okay. He's there. How you doing?
Wow.
Because before it was like, mom's up there. Hi, Mom. But it was, oh God. Yeah. God's up. Sure. God's up there. Yeah. Okay. And then it was like, there he is, kind of thing. So yeah, that was it for me.
That's heavy. I got a similar one I've told out there before, but that's
yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Jackie.
Yeah, absolutely. It led me down this path to being 180 degrees different than the way I grew up, the way I was in college, the way I was just out of college. I mean, I was a bad kid.
Me too. What was your journey like when you decided to attend church? Is that when you said people started to pull away from you?
Well, when I started, I must have tried every church in this area.
Yeah.
And when I walk in, when you walk into a room and you just feel that it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just feel like it's just not
I know
where
exactly
you're
what you mean.
supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's happened many times. I tried, the bigger churches, the smaller churches, and when I work with Kim Carson, you all know that. So when she told me to try here, I came. I think it was during COVID. You had just started here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so I came for a little bit, and I don't know if I wasn't ready to come back because I was more comfortable in my chair at home, watching it on TV, sermons and whatnot. But then I don't know. I got a hunger I needed a church family.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we stopped live streaming, because I told people. I said, people become complacent. They'll be like, I can just keep watching it on TV. Well, you can't recreate fellowship on a screen. I mean, you can show the sermon,
right.
But the feeling of interacting with people and being with people cannot be recreated and I said, well, we're not going to do this anymore, because a lot of churches closed because they kept live streaming after COVID. And I'm like, that's not fellowship. You can't do that. But then I talked to some older folks who can never get out of their house, and they want the messages. And I said, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll give you the messages, and they'll be in better quality than a streaming video. They'll be in high quality video, high quality. Every week you'll get your message. And they were happy. And then people who wanted to experience the whole sermon, I'm not going to spoon feed it to them over a streaming service because it's really bad quality anyway. So that worked.
Yeah, I just think the interaction, and I'm sorry, my point of view is there was no reason to stay away from each other at that point. But anyway, that's me. I think the reason I left the first time was someone else had told me about another church in the area, and I thought, okay, I'll try that one. So that's why I left there, because I was so afraid that if somebody found out, what I've done in the past, blah, blah, blah. There's that guilt and shame, Satan speaking in my ear.
There it comes again.
They're not going to accept you. And so this other church, oh my word, I was a blubbering fool. I think the first time I went to church there, the pastor and his wife, and this is embarrassing for me to speak this or say this, but heck, I spoke everything else that I probably shouldn't have. But they come up and they approached me and asked me my name and, oh, we're so glad you're here. And I just started crying. I just sobbed. And it was like, they probably thought I was a blubbering fool.
Yeah.
What is this girl doing here? She's crazy. And I just felt like a release for me.
It should be. I mean, you should be. People, I mean, it should be that way.
Yeah.
It should always be that way for, like we opened the conversation talking about people. I get people that call me, or I still do. I've done a couple interviews since I've been here with music related stuff. They go, "Hey, remember the time when you?" I go, "Yep, I sure do. I remember all that." And I mean, I don't, but sometimes I don't. Actually, a lot of times I don't. Other people will remember what you did, sometimes more than you do. But anyway,
Yeah.
It always reminds me of what I've been given, the start that I've been given, and why I've been given it, and all that. So I'm like, if I know I've been forgiven, if somebody else has a beef about it, that's their problem. So I can choose to make their problem my problem. I choose not to. So I tell people, sorry, I was in the wrong place. I'm a different person now. And if they can't accept that, hey, I did what I could do. So I don't. Again, it comes back to that guilt thing. You said but you finally feel somebody that expresses love just because you're here.
Yes.
And you're like, it was so emotional that you were like, I didn't even know how to respond to it because it was foreign to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, well, that's good. That's what happens when you get in the church family. Did people treat you different when you started going to church? Like more going to church?
I don't know. I wasn't really looking around. I was always trying to stay in the back row, stay out of people's ways.
You were a low profile.
I was low profile. I was like, I'll just slip in.
Well, no, I mean people close to you, like your family, like
my family.
Like, well, now you're, sometimes they get like, oh, now you're all churchy and Christian-y, and you're like, okay, here we go with this.
I haven't had any problems with my family. I mean, maybe my sisters a little bit, but that's all because they're all still trying to learn where they're at in Christ too.
Still finding their space. Did you get razzed when you started going to church?
I didn't get razzed, but I definitely church hopped because the place where I was when I made this discovery and got baptized became very gossipy, cliquey.
That's the worst.
Yes.
And that became more important than the sermon.
Yeah,
and it was.
We don't have anything like that. I would squash that like a bug if I ever thought.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's not why I'm here. That's not why I'm at church.
Right.
I don't care about all this other stuff. And then there were some people who said some things, but because we don't have children, so we were told that. Well, I was told specifically that I would never be a good Christian because.
Are you serious? Because you don't have kids?
Because I don't have kids. Yeah.
Somebody said that?
Yeah.
That sounds like a cult.
Well,
more than it does.
So that's when I really started church hopping and just like I know there's got to be something better out here, and and then I stopped. I stopped altogether, and I didn't go anywhere, and then I just felt like empty. Like I can't just read stuff. I need someone to actually explain this to me.
And I truly believe that that's why I stayed home to watch sermons, because that's exactly how I was feeling and made to feel. When I was going to, I'm not going to mention the church's name, there were a couple people in there that totally knew.
No, I'm just kidding. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Totally knew.
Don't say it. Don't
my
say
past, and it was a very cliquey. I don't do clicks. I'm sorry. I just don't.
When you walk in and they're going, as soon as you walk in the door, it's like, really?
They looked at me like, what is she doing here?
Yeah.
Do you know what she's done in the past?
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Well, listen though, I gotta say something about clicks. Not all clicks are bad. Hear me out. Because I've heard some people say click when what they're really doing is identifying maybe 5 or 6 people that are just happen to be close friends and do everything together. And then somebody who's not part of that group goes, they're a clique. Well, they are, but they've known each other maybe since high school, and they do. So they're not. But when we say clique, when I hear in a negative way, I look at it like everybody else does. There's a group of people who get together and gossip and talk about others, and you're not part of their clique. So that kind of clique is bad.
Yeah.
But I encourage groups of people who become close friends. I mean, there's people
Right.
that just naturally gravitate to each other because they have a common ground of things, food, movies, whatever. And then that group likes each other. And these guys may all like to hunt and fish, and they kind of gravitate. These women may like to bake and cook and work with their kids in projects, and they kind of gravitate together. Those kind of cliques are okay. But but sometimes, and I'm saying this because sometimes people, and I know this is true because I've actually done this, have thought, well, they're a clique and they're talking bad about me. And I realized later they weren't talking bad about me at all. It was my own paranoia, my own conviction. And then I had to go through this learning process to really think things through before I, am I right about this or am I? But I agree with all of you in the sense that no one, if you're a stranger somewhere, no one should behave in such a manner that you can feel that way.
Yeah.
That you should feel that way. They should, like you said, people should go out of their way to say, hey,
To welcome
here.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to be
Yeah.
a clique. You're right. It's okay if they welcome you.
Right.
If you're a stranger in the church, somebody, and I've said this before, I think I said it during my testimony, when you see somebody come in that door, don't hesitate to go up and welcome them and, just tell them you're happy to see them there, because people go to church to heal. They
Yeah.
don't go to church to be a spectacle from their past.
Right.
That's that's my whole deal.
yeah, yep. And you're right. It's not a church isn't a museum filled with perfect people. It's a hospital for people trying to get
Jesus
better. Everybody's
came
trying
to
to get
seek
better.
and save the lost, not
Exactly.
the self-righteous.
That's right. That's right. Let's see. What do you got next on our butt? Does anybody want to chime in on that before Mary? True to form, you're being quiet.
I have to say, Mary has become one of my very good friends since I came here.
Mary's like one of the sweetest people.
She is. I love her.
We interact with Mary a lot. Mary does. You do a lot. I know what you do. You give. She gives the food,
She's
the
so
work.
humble.
She is. She is
so humble.
but she does a lot. Irv's Meat Market.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The steak and the food, the meat, everything's good.
Great.
The macaroni
So
salad.
good.
It's my platform
What do you mean?
to reach out.
It's the way you interact with the public.
Yep.
Different people interact with the public. I tell, when you talk about testimonies, the best thing you can do if you don't talk to someone is the way you just live your life. And people see you. You got you interact with people in many ways. You work with Kim. You have the meat market. I know Jackie used to do trivia. Now Jackie does this with me. I know we all interact with people. Sometimes it's not sitting someone down and go, "Let me tell you how I know Jesus." Sometimes it's about letting people see. I like you. You got something. I want some of that. And then they see your example, and they walk towards the light that you're living in, and it's a good way to get people to understand the truth without intimidating them. When people run to Jesus, the adversary often tries to pull them back, and they experience a type of spiritual warfare in struggling with old behaviors and habits, trying to resurface in their lives. Did you ever experience this battle? It's common. That's how you know it's a spiritual forces are fighting over you. And I think everyone can relate to this. People get white hot in their faith. Oh, Jesus, I love Jesus. I'm all better. And then 2 months later, they wake up in a hotel drunk and they're like, "What happened? I just had Jesus. Why'd I do this?" And you're going to bust. You want to say something? I could go. What is it?
I just, when I met Glenn, he and I just clicked, and I love him beyond measure. And we've been together now we just celebrated our 20th. And
Very nice.
Congratulations.
But he's still not coming to church.
Yeah.
And it used to bother me, and I used to get mad at him and Chris for not wanting to go to church with me. And I used to slam doors and, just huff around the house, before I left for church. And then finally, that was another aha moment that I had. It's like, oh, wait a minute. You're being really stupid about this whole thing. You are being I'm not a good representation of Jesus. I go around saying, I love Jesus, and I finally found Jesus, and I'm finally forgiven, and, I feel good, but I'm being horrible at representing him to the people around me. I need to change my behaviors. I need to change my wicked ways. And so, yeah, that's why I need to come to church, listen to Drew, and I need to.
Well, there's a lot of families like that. usually it's the female, the mom, that will come to church and dad views it as something silly. And you're right. I mean, you have to live it out loud and let them see it. Yes. And hopefully, just because somebody getting mad at them, I mean, I can't endorse what you said enough. You're right. There's no point in getting mad about it. Mm-hmm. They see the change in you, and hopefully they'll do it. So,
but it wasn't only affecting them; it was affecting me and my heart. Mm-hmm. You know, it was affecting my love for Jesus, and it was.
Oh, because you thought he was letting you down. Why aren't you getting my family to church?
That was when the adversary often tries to pull that. He was pulling me back. He was just, why don't you just stay home today if you're that upset?
Yeah.
I was just hearing that in my head.
Yeah, that's what's the point? I mean, Jesus must not want me there. He's telling me to stay home. He's telling me to stay. Yeah, that's a struggle. It's a struggle in a lot of families. With men, it's a common thing. They're like, I break my back all week. I'm off Sunday. You don't have to go to church to I don't believe you have to go to church to be a good Christian.
I hear that so often.
Yeah, it's a delusion. But sometimes, I mean, every single one of us is delusioned about something, and when we get over it, something new, and then we have to break that wall down. It's a never-ending journey. Going to heaven is about a lot of falling down and getting back up again, and. It is a silly, because the Bible does command fellowship. People say, I don't like organized religion. Mm-hmm. And I say, as opposed to what? Disorganized religion?
Right.
There's all kinds of scripture that supports fellowship. How do you expect to go to a place where everyone resides in the presence of God in eternal fellowship, and you can't even do it here for a minute? And so it's like, and it is delusion. To say, I don't feel like you have to go to church to be a good Christian is like saying, I don't think I need a driver's license to be a good driver. I don't feel like I have to keep my wedding vows to be a good husband. I don't feel like I have to work really hard to keep my job. It's no different than a kid putting a bucket on his head, running around the backyard thinking he's an astronaut. It's delusional to say, I don't have to go to church to be a good Christian. Okay, well, what is a good Christian? I mean, I guess we start there. And now I'm done with my rant. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not bashing on people. Look at the camera for anybody who's listening. If you don't go to church, that's a place where you are in your life right now, and I'm not downing you for that. But don't say that you don't have to go to church. Don't tell someone who is participating in their faith walk that it's unnecessary.
Right.
Because that's where I take an issue. Look, I respect that you're where you are in your life, but don't throw stones at other people and try to say that they shouldn't be where they are. I mean, that's hypocrisy. Christians make that mistake. They look at somebody else and go, you do 2 or 3 sins that I don't do, and therefore you're a couple notches below me. I mean, there's this attitude out there like that. It's like, well, I mean, did Jesus function? Did Jesus say, all right, now everyone has a colored bracelet. Mm-hmm. The ones with the blue ones, you can sit in the front. Mm-hmm. The ones with the purple ones, behind them. Mm-hmm. If you have a yellow bracelet, back. You're in the mezzanine. I mean, according to your sins. I mean, all come to the Lord. I'm preaching. I'm sorry. I get it's just this topic. This is why we don't. It's turning into the loudmouth preacher thing.
Actually, I had a question for the two.
Yes.
Being moms and having kids in, this day and age, if your kids were sitting in church, would they actually participate in the fellowship, or would they be on their phones and not speaking to other people?
No, my son.
That's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Well, David used to sit on his phone, and then I had to tell him it's not respectful to be on your phone. I said, so we need to put our phones away while we're in church and pay attention to what Pastor Drew has to say, and
that's right,
and be able to discuss this later and take something away from it. So
I just wondered, because there's so many kids, I say kids, young people, whoever, that can't even interact with each other and can't carry on a conversation. So I was just thinking, if they're in church, which is unfamiliar territory and lots of adults and lots of, and everything else, are they just going to close up and sit there and be on their phone, or are they going to join in.
Or daydream like I used to.
Right, right. I mean, what do they do?
Well, I know that David likes to nudge me while we're doing worship, like push me around and stuff. Not really push me, but like when we're singing and stuff, he'll be like trying to push me around, and I'm trying to avoid him. But I think he interacts pretty well. Mm-hmm. I think he's at one time he wanted to move into the church and live here.
Oh, well,
What?
you know,
Yeah, he was like 5. He's like,
Oh,
I
okay.
want to live there.
not like
So-
18.
No, not recently.
I'm thinking of her husband, Dave.
Must have
And I'm like,
like Sunday school.
I thought she was this was leading up to some kind of a joke or something. Okay.
Yeah, Dave's moving in. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
That's funny. Dave Kloss. Yeah. Good man. I know. Anyway,
he seems like a good guy.
he is. I've talked to Dave's not at church. He's a fireman. He's a primary functioning gear in his family. I know he loves the Lord. He says we talk a lot, and when I see him, he's a real man. I guess is how I don't know. I know guys like that, like Mike, Jackie's husband. He's a stand-up guy too. It's just there's a lot of people like that in our community. We need people like that. But anyway, so I don't think that what you're talking about is almost it's a challenge of the modern day.
Yeah.
I don't think you knew about this. Actually, I'm quite certain you didn't. But I went to the elders and formulated a letter, and I include because based on some congressional hearings and all this stuff. Long story short, no more cell phones in youth group.
Okay.
You can't come if you're going to bring a phone.
Wow.
You leave it at home or you put it up.
amazing.
You can't have it when you're here. You're not going to disrespect people and be on your phone anymore. We're done with it. And schools have started it and colleges have started it, and it's been successful. And I know I'm not as soft about that when I'm talking because there's been a couple times I've been in youth group. I go talk to them or something.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, stop. What are you doing? Turn that off.
Right.
And because I'll call them out.
Yeah.
And I've only done that once or twice. And I go, okay, now I got your attention. And I'll go back on. But I'm like, we're done. So I sent it to the leadership team and the elders. And I worded it way more eloquently than the way I'm describing it. And they read it and they all agreed, hey, this is a great idea because all the problems that they have, and we don't have a very, all kinds of problems in youth group.
No.
But when there is something wonky or weird, it's because somebody's doing this and not paying attention.
Yeah.
And so they agreed. And so we did. We sent letters out, and I don't know if they've implemented it yet. I'm going to have to ask them about that. But we agreed to do it. And
Wow.
So
I think that is amazing. I'm so glad to hear you did that.
yeah. Well, thank you. I hope.
Yeah.
I just realized that I have not followed up. Hang on. Let me just let me do the very thing I'm talking about. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding. But yeah, I got to follow up. I got to go talk to users. I got a whole list of things. Anyway. Yeah. So when you said that,
Yeah.
I forgot. I don't think I ever shared that with you.
No, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's. I'm going to be shocked if kids actually are cool with it.
I think Denisha, who I interact with the most, because she's my understudy, if you will, I think that there was a brief conversation where she said to me, she told them, and they were shockingly okay with it.
Huh.
So far. That's the
Wow.
last I heard.
Wow.
And so I haven't followed up to see how's it actually going now.
Well, then that means that they're here for the right reason.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, you're only here for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't get off what's it called FOMO, fear of missing out,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, and it's just disrespectful. And the teachers and the students overwhelmingly, and it has gone before Congress, and it has proved to be fruitful for teachers and for students. And even some of the students said, yeah, it's better off.
Yeah.
I'm better off this way than
Wow.
my phone dinging, hey, you look nice today, or whatever they say to each other.
Yeah.
You got any weed? I don't, what.
I don't know. I don't know what kids say to each
Yeah,
other.
they say, okay, try to pretend I don't know what they're really doing. Anyway. You want to go on?
No, what?
I don't know.
Then they do.
You guys there's more to talk about, but I want you to speak your mind, speak your heart about
No, I was just curious about that because I've just observed kids in the wild, so to speak. And, in the wild.
Right.
And
their natural
in the
habitat.
wilderness.
In the wilderness, and they're staring at their shoes, or they're talking or they're texting and they're not talking, and they're texting the person sitting next to them, and it's like, how are you going to learn? How are you going to interact? How are you going to have a job interview?
Yeah.
If you can't have an actual conversation with someone.
You can. Well, this is a topic for a whole podcast.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Is,
Sorry.
yeah.
Rabbit hole.
My husband gets on his phone when he's at church. Mm-hmm. When he does come.
Yeah.
Coming to find out, he has the Bible app on his phone.
Yeah,
there you go.
A lot of people do it. We had to.
I was happy about that.
Years ago at a conference, they were telling us that. They're like, listen, when you see people on their phone, a lot of people. In fact, now some pastors say, if you pull up your Bible on your phone, if you don't have a Bible, and people are doing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it was the old me, I'd be playing Mario, going, Matthew 5, got it right here. When I was a kid. I mean, if I was a kid with a phone in church, that would be not as no, but I don't know. It depends on who's speaking, I suppose. No, I'm just kidding. There are some pastors that can put you to sleep. I used to tell my wife, and and they go, in Matthew 5, 17, you're like, dude, give me a pillow and a blanket. I know.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned David Jeremiah too, because he's like one of my all-time. Yeah. He was so instrumental in my Christian walk. His messages and stuff several years ago, even when I wasn't completely walking in obedience, he was. Yeah, he's in my opinion just one of the greatest of my life anyway at teaching.
Very instrumental. Yeah,
very good. Very good. Mm-hmm. Are there any stories you'd like to share about your journey that demonstrate when a profound change, in your that's a typo, profound change in you started to occur? So yeah, I guess that moment, did you have a moment where you went, you know what, I think I'm starting to feel better. This is making some sense to me. Mm-hmm. Do you recall, was that or is it just over time, or was there, I guess here's how I would define it if I was talking about me. It's the day I got up and never drank again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I'd gone to a mental health facility. They put a team of 4 people on me. I went to a doctor. I went AA meetings. Nothing worked. And then one day I got up and I never drank again. And I'm like, that wasn't my doing. Something happened.
Yeah.
And it was like being trapped in a coal mine, I tell people, for 50 years, begging for someone to send down a rope. And then one day I woke up freshly showered on the surface and went, what happened? Mm-hmm. So for me, that was my thing. Mm-hmm. Was there a moment when you went, hey, this is taking effect? Something's happening.
Well, I'm reading here, what does the old you look like? And I can tell you exactly what the old me looks like compared to now. The old me would have been cowering, just out in public. I couldn't even go to Walmart without seeing somebody that I knew. I'd have to turn around and walk the other way and pretend I didn't see them because I didn't want that interaction, that denial from them. Like if they would go by me, I couldn't stand it. Mm-hmm. If they would scowl at me or just give me a look and walk away, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I couldn't. So to me, that was insecurity, no confidence in myself. I was suffering from depression. I was, I don't know. I felt like demons were in my mind, telling me that I was the most horrible person on earth. And I think after I found Jesus, finally, and I think that was a gradual, now I'm a totally different, I can talk to anybody now.
Right.
I can talk to anybody, and I'm not even ashamed to talk about Jesus. I mention Jesus all the time at home. You can ask Glenn. I'm... I'll say that was Jesus, or that was my angel, or something profound happens. It's like that was God.
Yeah.
I'm totally. I'm even thinking about writing a book. I'm so in love with Jesus, and I just want the whole world to know that I'm not afraid.
No, that's
anymore.
That's the right attitude. That's the way. I mean, a lot of people approach how they handle that differently.
Yeah.
And if that's what's on your heart, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Did you?
Started.
You kind of blended those two questions together, but that's a good. What do you think, Mary? Like when you do a self inventory, what does the way you are now? Because I do want to say this one thing. You talked about being at a point in your life where you're trying to get closer to God. Now, even though I think we all are always close to that, I can think I'm not that bad of a guy now, or I'm still really bad, but I know that I'm way better than who I used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I guess that's the lens you look at that question through is to say, what are you like now compared to when you basically weren't barely walking with God at all?
I'd say for a long time I looked for approval in other people.
Yeah.
I always wanted to make sure that I was being nice to them, and that they liked me, and what did they think about me. I was always worried.
That's pretty common of people.
About, that person didn't say hi to me, and this one's not talking to me. I wonder if they're mad at me, and whenever it's really nothing at all.
Right.
You know, they could be having something going on in their own lives to where they're consumed with it. And I'm thinking, this world revolves around me, so now I'm paranoid, and a lot of that has gone away. The more I dug deeper in to know Jesus and to know who he was and what he came for and why I'm here, I realized that is just background noise. That is nothing to do with me and who I am and what I'm here for. I am to just be present, be happy, and just love people.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to love people again, so... For a long time, I didn't, which would explain why I was pretty much a hermit for a long time.
Right.
And then,
Same.
And then whenever we got to the store, God was like, "All right, Mary, I'm going to push you right out there to people, and you're going to love them all."
Right.
Yeah, that's me. That's
So.
Well, they say if you ask God, give me some patience, he's going to test you. You're going to work that muscle out.
Well,
God, teach me to forgive. You're going to be put in a situation where you have to use that.
Well, I did ask God. I did pray. I was like, "Oh Lord, I want to be my own boss and this and that." And then but the job I really wanted was to just be in the greenhouse by myself.
Oh yeah, I get that.
But he had other plans.
Always does.
He always does.
Yeah, I tell people. I wish I could say I relentlessly pursued God, but and I'm not going to go into a whole sermon. I've done this before, but God pursues us. The Holy Spirit pursues us, and I tell people when He taps you on the shoulder, you need to listen.
He taught me a lot about community.
Yeah,
and about unity, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things in life. And here I am.
I never knew you could pray for things. I never, like years ago when I didn't know Jesus, I didn't know that you could ask for help in something that you wanted to change in yourself.
a lot of times when we pray, God will change. Instead of changing the circumstances around us, He'll change the way we respond to things. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we pray for God to change everything else in the world and say, instead of give me the wherewithal to respond to this appropriately. Yeah. And I think that's where we should start, But yeah, I mean, it's always, there's nothing wrong with praying for anything, asking for anything, God answers all prayers. The answer is not always yes, but and sometimes we don't understand that till later. Mm-hmm. Why would you keep this from me? And then later you go, oh, I was talking to somebody close to me one time who was really sad about not having a relationship ever, a good loving relationship with their father. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't know the reason for that, but there are many possible answers. One possible answer is that this person is an absolute monster or a jerk or somebody that could have brought pain or harm into your life that you didn't know about. And you're sad about it now, But God said, you know what? I know this is going to hurt you now, but I don't want what could happen. I don't want this person close to you. And it happens to be your father. And that's one possible answer. So we don't see the protection we receive. You got here 15 minutes early. No, you got here 15 minutes early. Maybe if you were on your way here to get here and you would have got here at 5 till, you would have got T-boned at an intersection. But maybe something happened in your day that directed you to get here 15, and you have no idea. You have no idea about it, but it happened. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. When I talk about faith and trust, there's miracles that go on every second that we don't understand. But when the bad thing happens, we all go, how could you do this? We don't think about it. Sometimes the bad thing, there's a bunch of good things going on in the bad things.
Right.
Sorry, I was late today. Nobody knows in this room, but I'm still alive because I'm late. I mean, that's the way that we put our faith and our trust in God. I know I'm kind of going out there a little bit, but that's true.
It's something I've heard a lot of people say before is that God can see your whole life like a parade route, and he can see the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we only see the little part of the parade that's walking by us right now. So if he can see that whole thing and, let's make a little diversion here and go over here instead, then there must be a reason. And that was one of the hardest things for me to understand and accept. Because for me, it was, how could you let this happen? How could you let this happen? And why do you take good people away from us? And why do you do this and make people suffer and blah, blah. But now I know that there's specific reasons that certain people enter and leave our lives.
Right.
And, like Carrie, God bless him. Carrie came into our lives and then was snatched away from us. But he made such an impact in the 5 years that I knew him that it's the equivalent of a lifetime.
Yeah, he was an amazing guy.
One of those people. And it was the same with Mike's dad. Mike's dad was more of a dad to me than I ever had growing up, because I didn't have a dad growing up, basically. And I had 5 years with him before he got sick and died. So there's a reason. And he is the one who started pulling me towards God.
Right.
And yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So everything, you don't realize it at the moment, but there's a reason all these little things are happening around you. There
is. And to go back to one of the original points you were touching on about guilt, struggling with guilt. As your relationship with Christ grows, so does your strength and your confidence. And this is one of the most profound things to think about. This almost brought tears to my eyes when I the first time I talked about this. We get a relationship with God, and we start looking at Jesus. We look at Jesus. We're fixed on Jesus, and we're supposed to be. But the moment that you can really open your heart and it can just burst open like a flood is if you stop for 1 second and try to look at you through Jesus's eyes, knowing what you know about the way he thinks about people and his love. And if you just do that for 1 second and you try to look at yourself from his perspective, it can be a very emotional experience.
Absolutely.
And emotional already.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and then you see that. And it has a profound... I've spoken before on different topics where I've used this one analogy that if you look at a person who's done wrong or done evil or done something that you don't agree with, however you want to put it, and you look at them, okay, I know we got to wrap up, and you see them in their, I don't know, let's say their 40s. And then in your head, you can do this just laying in bed thinking about someone. And then you go back a little bit. You see them maybe in their 30s. Maybe you're seeing them going through a divorce or getting married the first time, or this joy of their second child being born. And then you go back a little bit to where they're like 22 and you see them with their first date with who's going to be their husband or their wife or whatever. And then you go back and you see their 16th birthday where they're the first time they get their driver's license and they get to drive a car. And then you go back, you end up at a little kid sitting on a blanket in a living room playing with toys. and you look at them and you think, what could go wrong in this kid's life that would make me hate them? That's the way God sees us. All these sins and all these things we accumulate, it comes back to the kid on the blanket in the living room that's playing and slobbering and smells good when you hold them close and nuzzles into your chest when they're falling asleep. And if you can see yourself and your brokenness, and when you're sitting in your car crying about something and you feel guilty because somebody else hates you, and you try to look at yourself through the eyes of Jesus, and he sees you hurting and he sees you crying, just like you feel about your own kids, you want to pull him in. When you think about that kind of love that is felt for you, it can have a profound effect on you, releasing guilt. Because you realize the ultimate love, the love that is unfathomable when we leave here, that we'll experience. I mean, it's a safe place in a dark world. So anyway, all right. We're late wrapping up here. Do you feel a specific calling at your point in this life? We kind of covered that. You talked about and you talked about doing where you work. I know Jackie lives out loud, and did you want to comment on that?
I do live out loud.
I love that term. I think it's true. You should.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Can I adopt that?
Absolutely.
That didn't come from her.
It didn't come from
me either.
Take it and run with it.
It's an old saying. But
Yeah.
What do you? Okay, this is the end of our last question. We'll go around the table. What do you want others to take away from your personal experience with God?
That I have no more fear.
Good.
I can get up and do my testimony, give that, and do it, and get it off my shoulders, and just let people know that you can do the same. Even though you didn't do exactly what I did, you might have your own struggles and your own, chose to commit your own sin. I don't know what it is, but you can have that freedom and the joy that I have now. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel like you have to earn somebody's acceptance or approval anymore. You don't need it.
Amen.
No.
The audience of one. Live for the audience of one. What about you, Mary?
Do it afraid.
Huh?
Whatever it is you want to do it. Even if you're afraid.
Well, they say that in college.
Even if you're afraid. I mean, there's a lot of things to be afraid of out there.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Now it's getting worse, too.
You can be fearless. I know. It's true. Jackie?
I'm with both of you, but I mean, the confidence that I feel and the protection that I feel now that I have this connection with God, Jesus, whatever we want to call it. I mean, compared to when I was a kid, and
I know,
and I had the force.
Right.
Now I have this thing that is tangible in a way.
Right.
And it's such a different feeling, you know.
That minute when you know you're going to be all right.
When you know you're going to be all right.
It's a huge release.
Yeah.
Yep. What do I want others to take away from my personal experience with God? Well, I talk about it every single Sunday. So show up to church and you'll...
I tell everybody, your messages are so profound in my life. It's like you are such a real person, and you've given your testimony in how many of your messages? And you're not afraid.
Right?
Yeah. Talked about... I've never given the whole thing, and
you don't need to.
I keep thinking someday I'm going to have to do something. I don't know. Anyway, but thank you. I appreciate it.
You show people that everybody sins. Everybody has a past, and everybody needs Jesus. And I don't know.
That's 2 sermons ago. I did the healing power of confession. That topic came up.
Yes.
When people share vulnerabilities with one another through a confession.
Yes.
Yeah. When you share, it brings closeness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway. I thank you guys. Thank you both for being here. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Mary. Love talking to you. This is a nice, interesting break from what we did, and we managed to laugh and have a good time.
We did.
We did. So, and I learned a lot.
My husband does think that you need to do a podcast on football.
Yeah. We talked about that before.
Do you see the hat?
We talked.
What he's wearing?
I know, and we're Mountaineers, so it's like,
I know he's a Mountaineer.
Fans, and it's like,
and he. I know he is. We've talked, and there's the Penn State. We've talked about doing that, but we don't know how would you go at it. Because guys start talking smack, and then the conversation will be all over the place. And by the time it'd be fun, but
it would be fun.
It would be fun.
we could talk about the sport of football, like growing up playing and then try to leave our favorite teams on the sidelines.
Yeah, right.
But I know I wouldn't be able. I'd be like, well, that's why Ohio State has stomped your guts out over the. Let's look at the record. I wouldn't be able to. My brother says I'm a sore winner when we were kids, not now.
Yeah.
We'd play games. I remember. I would rub it in. How you doing over there? Like Battleship? You remember Battleship?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I remember.
So you have a white
Battleship.
peg if you miss, a red peg if you hit the other person's ship. And I'd be playing my brother, smoking him, and I'd be like, hey, I'm running real low on red pegs. Can you give me some of your red ones and I'll give you some of my white pegs? Because and he would flip the board up and walk out of the room. And
oh, that's awesome.
Okay, sorry.
No.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. See you later.